And hello, everyone watching us around the world. I'm Anderson Cooper. Thanks for joining us to honor Nelson Mandela in this digital global tribute. Obviously, the life and legacy of Nelson Mandela has impacted millions of people around the world. And today we want to hear from those who worked closely with him and admired him over the course of his lifetime. We want to welcome His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, who's joining us from India, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and his daughter, Reverend Mpo Tutu, as well. They're going to start the conversation with us. Then we're going to be joined a little bit later on in this half hour by Sir Richard Branson and former Irish President Mary Robinson. And I should say today's conversation is being hosted by Peace Jam's 1 Billion Acts of Peace and the Nelson Mandela Center for Memory. And as I said, His Holiness joins us from New Delhi, India now, and Archbishop Tutu and Reverend Tutu join us from Cape Town, South Africa. We're also going to be inviting viewers from across the world to join the conversation via Google+, Twitter, and Facebook, using the hashtag Mandela Tribute to ask questions and share their thoughts. Your Holiness, Archbishop Tutu, Reverend Tutu, thank you very much for joining us today. We'll start with you, Reverend Tutu and Archbishop Tutu. Obviously, you are still in South Africa, where there are still tributes going on for Nelson Mandela. His burial will be later this week. Let's just start off, Archbishop, with your thoughts on the man that you knew so well and worked with so well, Nelson Mandela. What do you want people to know about him? What should people remember about him?
Thank you very much. It's that you run out of words in many ways, but I think what we are seeing, this outpouring of love and admiration from so many people in our country, in a way reminiscent of 1994 April, the long lines of people. They are really saying this was a man who cared. He cared about us. It's not something that you can put on. Yes. One, he helped our country not go up in flames by this extraordinary magnanimity that saw him urge his people to forgive, to work for reconciliation, and then in his own kinds of ways, the things that he did as president, and after stepping down as president, his compassion, his caring about other people.
Reverend Tutu, what was he like one-on-one? What was he like as a man when you were with him?
I think the most striking thing about him was probably his humility. He had an incredible dignity in his manner and his carriage, but also a very wonderful personal touch. He was not pompous at all. He was an incredibly gracious and gentle man.
Your Holiness, the Dalai Lama, Your Holiness, one of the things often said about Nelson Mandela was his willingness to forgive those who had oppressed him, those who had imprisoned him for 27 years. Where do you think that ability to forgive, where does it come from, and is that something everybody can do in their life?
Yes, I believe basic nature of human being. You see, because you see, our life start the way our life start. You see, from mother's womb, and then you see, we grown up with tremendous sort of mother's affection, including mother's milk. So I believe affection, you see, from mother and of course parent, and particularly mother, you see, I think very much absorbed in our blood. So therefore, any sentient being or even animal, who received a lot of affection from their mother, usually, you see, they also have the ability to show affection to other. Then Nelson, the great sort of person, Nelson Mandela, on top of that, you see, he also, you see, practiced religion, all major Christianity. So all major religion, you see, teach us practice of affection. Therefore, you see, I feel, you see, his sort of the political, struggle, you see, his inner sort of these, the conviction, even in the political struggle, he carry these inner values. So that's my belief. Like Mahatma Gandhi, very, very religious minded. Meantime, freedom struggle. I'm a freedom fighter. So, and my dear sort of respected friend here, the Bishop Tutu, I believe your main sort of strength come from your belief, your faith.
Archbishop Tutu
so that's my view. So in any way,
I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead.
Yes.
Sorry, there's a delay, so it's a little bit difficult to have the conversation. Go ahead, Your Holiness.
I want to say later part of 20th century, Mahatma Gandhi, you see, one human being who carry the freedom struggle through non-violent sort of principle. Then eventually, like Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King, you see, these great sort of human beings, they follow the Mahatma Gandhi's the pattern, the struggle strictly through non-violent principle. So, so I now these days, you see, after you see his he passed away. You see, I express I am one of the admirer of him. So now our responsibility is, you see, we must follow his spirit, his sort of conviction, non-violence. That I think now we have, those people who admire him have this sort of moral responsibility to take care, to take continuously, whether the person alive or not, his spirit should be alive. So carry continuously, not only our own generation, but also introduce or hand it over to younger generation. So now I think we very much sort of sad, very much sad. However, just as a sadness, this is not much use. Now that sadness now must translate into willpower, determination. That's my view.
Archbishop
so
Tutu,
like Bishop Tutu, still very much alive. Now just here, I see, you see, your face, very fresh, full of spirit. So now, I'm quite sure you will carry continuously the spirit of late brother.
I'm sure, I think everybody can see that spirit in Archbishop Tutu and Reverend Tutu as well. Archbishop Tutu, I was talking to David Turnley, a Pulitzer Prize winning photographer, who was in the room when Nelson Mandela was released from prison and met you for the first time after being released from prison. And he said there was a moment where you stood up and you knocked on your glass and you got the attention of the room, and you looked into Nelson Mandela's face very closely and you said to him, "I want to tell you what you have meant to me." Do you remember that moment, and can you describe, do you remember what you said to him?
I am decrepit. I just know that it was quite overwhelming to stand in his presence. It's like when I'm with my friend, His Holiness, and I have said, you know, Mandela and His Holiness are the only two non-pop stars who can fill Central Park. I mean, they attract people. At the moment when I saw him, you were aware of an aura already that surrounded him, and it's especially his caring for people. You know, the following morning, let me just say, which illustrates what I'm saying. The following morning, one of the first things he said he wanted was to be able to express his thanks and appreciation to the staff at Bishop's Court, underscoring something that was so characteristic of him, his deep reverence for other people. That for him, your station in life did not determine who you were. Each one of us, he was saying in his attitudes, each one of us is someone of infinite worth in the sight of God. And if you went to a meal with him, a state banquet, one of the things that he almost always did was going into the kitchen to say thank you to the staff for having done what they did.
I want to bring in also the former president of Ireland, Mary Robinson, who's joining us from New York, and also Sir Richard Branson, who is joining us. Welcome to you both.
Where is
President Robinson? Let me begin with you. What do you think? His Holiness was talking about continuing the legacy of Nelson Mandela, and that's what we're focusing on this morning. What do you think that means? What should people carry with them moving forward from Mandela's life?
Well, he's certainly somebody that we loved and admired for his values and the fact that he lived those values. And I still remember when I was invited to come to Ulusaba in South Africa, Richard Branson's place, to sit with Nelson Mandela and hear about the formation of the elders. And of course, I didn't feel qualified to be an elder in those days, but that was in May 2007. And we heard him coming because we heard the singing outside, and he came in on the arms of Grassa with our chair, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and we sat at a round table. And I still remember that strong voice telling us to speak out against injustice, to try to heal forgotten conflicts, to reach out to those who were most marginalized, and especially young people. And he repeated that, especially young people. And there was such an incredible power in what he was saying. And we felt very humble, I certainly did. But we also felt charged with a responsibility as elders to try to do whatever we could. And we used to meet with him for lunch in successive years in honor or near his birthday in July. And that was such fun because he was always teasing Archbishop Tutu and being teased back. And you know, he had that great sense of mischief, but deeply serious about justice.
Also joined by Sir Richard Branson. Sir Richard, you worked with Nelson Mandela with this nonprofit humanitarian group, the Elders, which President Robinson was referencing. To you, what is the important part of his legacy to carry forward?
Well, I think the idea that he had behind the Elders was that his life wouldn't be wasted, and that for decades, maybe centuries to come, a group of wonderful men and women with high moral authority could take the baton forward, could speak out on global issues where things, sometimes difficult things, needed to be said, and could intervene in conflicts. And I'm afraid there are still many conflicts going on around the world. I mean, Mary Robinson is working on the Central African conflict. Lakhdar Brahimi is working on the Syrian crisis. President Carter's spent quite a few trips to Myanmar, where there are quite a few issues. There's still Palestine, Israel, where all the elders spend a lot of time on. So hopefully, through the elders, his work can continue for years to come.
Archbishop Tutu, I have a question from Jalal Al-Juni from River City Science Academy in Jacksonville, Florida. Were there any significant issues about which you and Nelson Mandela disagreed?
Dress code.
I don't think he liked getting my advice on his sartorial taste. He was actually an incredibly humble. Paul was saying this. He was checking with Gracia, and I said, you are setting a very bad example. And he went off and they got married, and I think it was one of the best things that has happened. I mean, Gracia gave him a great deal of joy in his latter years. But when I said to him, I think, I mean, his shirts look like pajamas. He said, yeah, who can listen to a man who wears a dress in public?
And Archbishop, for South Africa today, what is the important thing about Mandela to carry forward, about his legacy? South Africa faces so many issues today, so many inequalities, so many issues of problems of government. What does South Africa need to remember?
I mean, I think the most important, obviously, is that we are a rainbow nation, and we really ought to carry on this legacy that he has left us, of being an embodiment of reconciliation, magnanimity, and forgiveness, and really to be saying no one must be left behind. We are a country that can, I mean, we needn't be the most, the wealthiest country, but we can be a country where everyone matters.
And I mean, he has given us an incredible example of forgiveness and really been a trailblazer on the route to reconciliation. But the task of reconciliation is one that is not complete, and it is one that we must, in his name, continue and complete.
Well, let me ask His Holiness about that. Your Holiness, we have a question from a student, a 13-year-old student in Kabul in Afghanistan at the Torch of Light School. The student's name is Mesbahuddin. Their question is, how can we keep Mandela's spirit alive in Afghanistan, especially when it comes to forgiveness and reconciliation? It's very easy to talk about forgiveness and reconciliation, but in a place like Afghanistan, it is a necessity. How can that be done?
Now, when we look past history, when human being, individual level or national level, you see some sort of problems or difficulties when they face, you see, often use force. Result, most cases, counterproductive. Once you use violence with anger, then maybe if you have sufficient sort of force, you can control physical, but never control mind or change of mind. So therefore, the real long-lasting solution is through non-violence, through compassionate sort of approach. Then that method can can change the human mind. Hatred eventually become love. So therefore, I think the people like Afghanistan, so people in Afghanistan, you see, a lot of trouble, a lot of atrocity. Then that's, I think, real period to practice forgiveness. If things okay, then practice of forgiveness is word. When things really difficult, ordinary people, they often become violence. That's the moment the practice of forgiveness. So I would like to share with this young person. Now this is right time to think about the value of non-violence in general, and particularly the value of forgiveness. Through that way, you can build new atmosphere. You can create new atmosphere. Then this negative feeling of desire for revenge, these things, then gradually melted. So here you need a little bit of patience and willpower. That anger never built determination of willpower. Compassion really creates inner strength, self-confidence. That's the basis of willpower. That I would like to share.
Archbishop Tutu.
Something wrong. My elder brother make correction.
Well, let's go to your elder brother. Archbishop Tutu, you sat on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. You sat and listened day after day to the humiliations that black South Africans were subjected to for generations in your country. And you listened to horrible crimes that government officials, that security personnel in South Africa confessed. And that was a commission all about forgiveness. How could you sit and hear those horrible things and yet be able to forgive? I think for many people, that strength is hard to understand.
Yes. I didn't do a great deal of forgiving. I was just presiding over a commission. It was the people, and it's amazing. It was so humbling. And it was people of all races, you must remember. It wasn't just black people being the forgivers and white people being the culprits. Sometimes, I mean, you have Amy Beale, an American, whose parents, after she was killed brutally, came to South Africa and said they supported the granting of amnesty to the people who had murdered their child. You were humbled, and many times in the sessions when we finished, I would say, please let us keep quiet for a little while, because we are sitting on holy ground. We ought to take off our shoes. Human beings can be extraordinary. I mean, they can be incredibly noble, where you heard atrocities that were committed, and the survivors or the members of the family of someone who had been killed brutally, being ready to go, not just shaking hands, but to embrace the perpetrator. It was an incredible thing, and you couldn't, you just had to say the nobility of the human spirit is really amazing. And we have an example in His Holiness. There is a man who has been in exile over 50 years from his homeland. And he does not have a stitch of bitterness and hatred against the Chinese who have done what they have done to him and are doing to his motherland. So we have an embodiment in him. We have it in Madiba, but we have it also in yourself, in Mary Robinson, when people were able to sign the Good Friday agreement in Northern Ireland. It's amazing the nobility that we do, in fact, all of us have. And that is why Madiba is held in such high esteem right around the world. Ultimately, people are drawn by goodness, and he was an embodiment of goodness. The Dalai Lama is an embodiment of goodness, and that is why they were able to fill Central Park.
I wish we could continue this conversation. It's an extraordinary gathering of people. I'm not going to say elders because I don't want to offend anybody, but it is an extraordinary gathering of accomplishment and
elders, except from Paul.
It's an honor to be with all of you at this time, and again, I wish we had more time, but I'm told we have to wrap it up. But, Archbishop Tutu and Reverend Tutu, thank you so much. I know you continue this week with the remembrances of Nelson Mandela, which will of course continue for the rest of our lives. Because it's not something that will just occur this week. President Robinson, Sir Richard Branson, and Your Holiness, the Dalai Lama, thank you so much for joining us on this Google Hangout.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Richard.
Bye, Arch.
Bye, Arch.
Bye-bye, sweetie.
Bye, Mary. Bye, Your Holiness.
Okay.
Bye-bye, Your Holiness.
Bye, Your Holiness.